Hi, I'm Rich Harwood. Welcome to another special edition of Turning Outward Together. It's good to have you with me. As you know, these special editions are about helping us stay grounded during COVID-19 and these crazy, challenging times in which we live. If you're interested in previous episodes, you can go to our Facebook page, just find the banner there about Turning Outward Together, click it on, and you'll find a playlist of all the previous episodes of Turning Outward Together. You may notice I have my special shirt on, Live United. I put it on this morning when I woke up. Getting ready for this, I thought about changing it, but I decided to keep it on in support of, as many of you know, Live United is the slogan for United Way. Um, so I decided to keep it on in support of all local United Ways all across the country. We've been a partner of United Way worldwide and local United Ways for many years now, and I'm proud and glad to wear this shirt. And I thought I'd keep it on for today. Special topic today. Amid this crisis, the good news is that there are all sorts of extraordinary things that we're seeing ordinary people do in our communities clear across the country. It's really an extraordinary thing. And at the same time, the very same time, it can seem like our country is coming apart at the seams, that our very basic sense of who we are is at risk. And so today, the topic that I want to cover is, how do we safeguard our dignity today? How do we safeguard our dignity today? Shoot me a message. Let me know that you can hear me. Let me know where you're calling in from today. And as we spend the next 20 minutes or so together this afternoon, here's a question I'd love for you to think about and write to me about. What do you think it means to safeguard our dignity today? Again, I'm Rich Harwood. This is a special edition of Turning Outward Together, the topic, safeguarding our dignity today. As many of you know, we've been sponsoring a nationwide questionnaire that we've sent out to people all across the country called Engaging Frontline Civic Leaders in Responding to COVID-19. There are four basic questions that we've been asking, and the deadline for answering the questionnaire is not until May 31st. But we've had scores and scores of responses so far come in, and as I did last week, this week I took a peek at some of those early responses, and it's really interesting. There's a real clear trend, among others, but there's a very clear trend about a concern in terms of what people are wrestling with in our country today. There seems to be a struggle that's going on that so many people are wrestling with, and it's a struggle that I see seeping throughout our country, not just in people's individual lives. When it comes to this pandemic that we're facing and these larger questions that we're confronting, there seems to be an increasing politicization of what's happening. One person who answered our questionnaire said, quote, "I worry about the divisive nature of the pandemic. Because it's become politicized, I fear for a lack of unity and compassion in my community's response." There is a sense of misinformation, increasing misinformation being passed around in our country today. One person said the amount of misinformation and the deceit relating to the COVID-19 crisis that is being given to the public, including key government officials, including key government officials. Some would even say our president. There is a sense of the other in our society. One person wrote, "I worry that we will become accustomed to our isolation, deep unfounded fears of the unknown, and or those who think differently from us," unquote. And then there is this growing sense, this struggle that I hear people writing about and talking about, of distrust, where people are increasingly experience severe distrust of authority, that we can't believe what we're hearing and who is saying it. And then on top of all these things, there is this sense of growing disparities in our country. Just today, in the front page of the New York Times, the lead story is that children's hunger is at the highest point in our modern history. There are people losing jobs. Our unemployment rate, while it says it's about 14, 15%, the real unemployment rate, economists say, is probably over 20% today. There is pervasive mental illness. Just another study this week came out and said that 34% of Americans are suffering some form of depression and or anxiety. And so I ask you, how are you feeling about things today? How are you feeling about things today? And it's not, these feelings, it's not just that they're affecting us collectively, but they're affecting us personally as well as individuals. These things can make us feel, these trends that I'm talking about, can make us feel unnerved. They can make us feel as if we're losing our bearings. They can make us feel as though we have lost a sense of our grounding. They can, for many of us, at least some of us, make us feel that we've lost a sense of self. For many of us, I think increasingly for far too many of us, we have lost a sense of safety and security. Those are words that are used in this questionnaire that we're getting back from scores and scores of people across the country. Many of you have heard me speak in the past about the fact that I think there are three fundamental things that Americans have been looking for even before the pandemic, and which I think even now after this pandemic or during it, they're looking for even more. And that is a sense of dignity, a sense of real, authentic, genuine hope, and a sense that community is a common enterprise that we're all pulling in a common shared direction. And so today, amid these trends that I've been talking about, the politicization, misinformation, the sense of the other, the sense of distrust, the growing sense of disparities, I want to talk about the first of the three major points I just mentioned, which is dignity, And that in these times, when we feel increasingly insecure, when we feel increasingly uncertain, when we feel increasingly ungrounded, our basic sense of dignity can feel under attack. Our basic sense of dignity can feel under attack. We as individuals and we collectively as people can feel swept aside. We can feel a sense of being violated by this misinformation, by how politicized something like a pandemic makes us feel about the thinking about the other and othering other people. We can feel fundamentally when we lose our jobs, when we experience this pervasive mental health, when children are going so hungry, when we feel so uncertain and unsafe, we can feel fundamentally that we no longer matter. We can feel that there's a kind of unreality happening around us, that we kind of live in a house of mirrors, and we're not quite sure what is real, what is true, what we can hold on to, what we can grab hold of, what will give us a sense of safety and security. You know, when you don't feel seen and heard, when someone, maybe yourself, doesn't feel seen and heard, your sense of reality is denied. And when your sense of reality as an individual, as a person, or as a community is denied, your sense of dignity is denied. It's something I've learned over and over again in working in communities. And here's the thing. Dignity is one of the most important, if the not most important thing that we have. It's fundamental to who we are as people, as individuals. Dignity, let's be clear, is different than respect. Respect is something that you maybe earn over time from other people. It's something that is afforded to you in a certain way, that's given to you because of your behavior, the way in which you act, the way in which you engage. Dignity is fundamentally different. Dignity is a birthright. Dignity is not something that's negotiable. It's unnegotiable. Dignity is something that you are afforded regardless of the color of the skin, your creed, your heritage, your history, where you're born, your native language. Dignity is something that is given to you that you have as a birthright, regardless of how much money you make, the type of car you drive, the clothes you wear, the zip code you live in. Dignity is something that is intrinsic to being alive and being human. Now, we give lip service to dignity in our society, but it is a birthright. It is intrinsic. It is inherent to being alive. And it seems to me that for so many people in our country, their sense of dignity is now under attack. Their sense of dignity is under attack by the misinformation, by the politics, by the sense of being seen as being different, as the other, by the loss of dignity from a loss of job, the loss of dignity from going hungry at night, the loss of dignity from mental illness. And for us in our country, the question is, how is it in these conditions, under these conditions, that we can safeguard our dignity? I think it's the most fundamental, most important thing as human beings we can do. Dignity is fundamental to our human value. It's fundamental to our human relations. And it's fundamental to building a hopeful, inclusive, shared society. Without dignity, those things can't exist. It's that fundamental. And so I want to talk about what we can do to safeguard our dignity in these uncertain, insecure times. There are two parts that I want to talk about, two parts of dignity. Both are critical. Both are critical. One, we tend to, if we talk about dignity at all, we talk about the other, not so much, that I want to make sure I cover today. And both require you to play an active role in safeguarding both aspects of the dignity I want to talk about. The first one is this, that we must safeguard the dignity of others, and by others, I mean all of us, all others. That no one gets left behind, no one gets left out, that every single individual in our society is afforded dignity. This is especially important in these times. It's so easy, you know this, it's so easy to disparage one another. It's so easy to not to hear the concerns of others, to turn away from others, to turn our backs on others. This, amid the extraordinary things that are happening in our communities, these things are happening even more. We disparage one another, we turn our backs on one another, we turn others into our enemies based on their political views, their political parties, maybe where they live, whether or not they live in the coast or in the heartland of our country. We take misinformation and we use it and spread it. Oftentimes we use it as a weapon. And when we misinform ourselves and misinform others in a pandemic, we endanger one another. We endanger one another. We see this every day. We don't have to look very far. We see it on the news as our political figures, including our president, go after each other and disparage one another. We see this reflected. I just saw this on the news last night where there was a person, one of these person on the street interviews. This happened to be someone who decided to go to a beach when the beach opened in their state, and said essentially, in this particular instance, if the president says it, then it's okay, I will do it. I've heard other people say, if my interest group says it's okay, I will do it. And yet these things are often rooted in misinformation. We see this when others say it's okay if I don't wear a mask. We see it where we question each other in communities. I was on a call not too long ago, just a couple of weeks ago, where people were questioning others in the community about the choices they were making, the ways in which they live their lives, the homes they live in, the cars they drive, how they're using their money during this pandemic. And in doing so, we turn people into the other and we deny them their dignity. The truth is, we have these growing disparities in our country that deny people their dignity. And so, again, when we don't see and hear one another, we deny each other's reality. When we deny each other our reality, we deny that person their dignity. Donna Hicks wrote a great book on dignity that I loved. I'd really encouraged you. It's called Dignity. And in it, she wrote, "Suffering puts our lives on hold." Think about it. Suffering puts our lives on hold. So many people are suffering today. They are anxious, they're insecure, they feel unsafe, they feel anxious. They're living through these disparities. When we deny people their dignity, they suffer even more. And so what does it mean? What does it take for us to afford each and every person their dignity, to safeguard our dignity under these conditions? Which again, I think is one of the most important, most human, most fundamental things that we can choose to do during this time. Now I'm going to remind you of some things. You already know all these things, but I'm going to say them anyway, because I think they are fundamental to safeguarding one another's dignity. Do we really see and hear everyone in our communities? Do we see and hear everyone in our work? And how do we reflect that? How do we reflect that? When we disagree with other people, are we able to give them the benefit of the doubt so that we can continue to engage with them and turn toward them as opposed to turning away from them? Do we believe in people's potential to rise above where they may be? That we can transcend our differences, that we can be better, that we can bring out the better parts of one another. And so that we can, in doing so, ensure that we are affording one another dignity. Do we believe in a sense of possibility and hope that things can change? Because if we don't believe that things can change, if we don't believe that people can change, if we don't believe that our divisions can be changed, then we will turn away from each other. We will demonize one another. We will point fingers at one another. And in the process, particularly during this pandemic, we will deny one another our dignity. And in doing so, we will deny the human value of each and every person, the God-given human value of each and every person in our society. And when it comes to inclusion, a word we like to use, a word that I often say progressives like to use, but often don't necessarily practice in reality. When we say the word inclusion, do we really mean the inclusion of everyone? That each of us belongs, that everyone belongs, regardless of the color of our skin, of our sexual orientation and who we love, of where we live, of how much money we have, of what kind of car we drive, of our creed, of our heritage, of our history? And if we don't believe that, is it possible to still afford each and every person the dignity they deserve, the birthright they deserve, the God-given right that they have? What this means for you in this environment, if we really want to safeguard the dignity of each and every individual in our society, what this means for each of us, what it means for you. I'm not talking abstractly about some notion of dignity read in a book, that I read in a book, or that maybe you read in a book, or some sense of dignity that someone talks about as a campaign slogan. I'm talking about the practice of dignity in our daily lives and what it means for what you do and what it means for what I do. I think first and foremost, if in fact you want to practice this dignity, it means that we cannot surrender to current conditions. We can't give up, we can't walk away, we can't believe that we are powerless in the face of this misinformation, in the face of things being politicized, in the face of some people seeing others as the other. We can't believe that we are powerless in the face of growing disparities in our country. There's work to be done and we must do it. And at the heart of that work is ensuring that each and every person is afforded dignity. And here's the thing. How the person next to you act is one thing, but how you act, how you choose to engage, how you choose to step forward, how you choose to see and hear other people, how you choose to decide whether or not you're going to fight against these disparities, these growing disparities in our community. Each of us holds the power to make the choice to make that fight. We don't have to surrender. We don't have to give up. I know the fight is hard. I know it's challenging right now. I know we're all tired. I know we ourselves often feel insecure and unsafe in this environment. But what I need you to do, what we need you to do, what we all need each other to do, is to step forward and not surrender and not feel as though we are powerless. We do have the power to act, even if it's just with the person standing next to us, even if it's just the person across the room, even if it's just the person across the street. We have the power to act. The other things we must do if we want to ensure that we're safeguarding dignity for everyone is that we must make ourselves vulnerable. Now, this is a hard thing to say right now. I had a conversation with someone about this morning. Making yourself vulnerable in this environment is not the easiest thing to do. We are steeling ourselves for this misinformation. We are steeling ourselves for these politicized things that we keep hearing. We steel ourselves against people complaining about other people's views or even our own views or your views. And what I'm asking you to do is, amid these challenges, amid this anxiety, amid this feeling of being tired and sometimes even beaten up, I'm asking you to make yourself vulnerable, because only when you make yourself vulnerable can you open yourself up to see and hear other people. Only when you make yourself vulnerable can you suspend judgment about others who you might have preconceived notions about, or you might harbor stereotypes about, or you might have preconceived notions about. The only way to suspend those judgments is to make yourself vulnerable. The only way to afford dignity to other people is, even when they say hurtful things, we have to hear them. We have to hear them. When people express their grievances, their hurt, their sorrow, their anxiety, we have to make ourselves vulnerable enough to hear them so that we can see and hear their reality and we can afford them their dignity. So that's the first thing. We have to act to safeguard our dignity, all people's dignity. You still with me? Hope you're still with me. The second thing is this. We need to safeguard our own dignity. You need to safeguard your own personal dignity. This is a part that's not often talked about nearly enough. And when I say safeguard your own personal dignity, let me just be really clear. I'm not talking about whether or not you get to choose whether or not you wear a mask. I think the public health experts have made clear we all need to wear masks. I'm not talking about whether or not you get to choose whether or not you're going to engage in social distancing. The public health experts have made that clear. I'm not talking about whether or not you choose to gather in large groups on a now open beach. The public health experts have made that clear as well. All of those acts, the ones I just mentioned, potentially put others at risk. And what I would argue is this is a denial of other people's dignity. But here's the thing. To genuinely do the things I was talking about in terms of honoring other people's dignity, truly affording other people their dignity, to value their dignity means that you must value your own. You must value your own, because this is what enables you to be present. It's what enables you to be vulnerable. It's what enables you to be real. It's what enables you to be alive and awake. When you don't value your own dignity, you compromise yourself in the process. And in compromising yourself in the process, it's very hard, actually, to afford other people the dignity that they deserve as well. Now, this is hard when we feel increasingly unsafe and insecure. Donna Hicks, the person I talked about who wrote the book on dignity, when she was talking about our self dignity, wrote, one's identity, one's sense of self, requires a sense of safety and stability to evolve. Lacking safety and stability, our sense of who we are becomes frozen in time. We can feel frozen in time right now because of the lack of safety and security that we feel, the growing uncertainty that we feel, the growing acrimony and divisiveness that we're experiencing all around us. This can freeze us in place. It can make us feel trapped. And so safeguarding your own dignity is about caring for yourself. It's about self-care. It's about unfreezing yourself in a way. And so I'm just going to remind you of some things about this that are really important that I suspect you already know. But in this day and age, in this time, these reminders may be helpful. And it's this. They're going to sound really basic, but they're important. One is that someone needs to say that you hold intrinsic value. You as a human being, as an individual, you hold intrinsic value. And this doesn't mean that you have to give up your intrinsic value in order to afford it to others. You don't need to do that. That while you are here to serve other people, there are limits. There are limits. This doesn't mean that you are powerless. It is an exercise of your power. That by setting limits, you are exercising your power. So before I said you are not powerless in affording other people dignity, neither are you powerless in ensuring that you safeguard your own dignity. And that as you seek to hear others and to honor others, they do not have a right to abridge or deny you your dignity. In other words, there are boundaries. There are boundaries. And let me just underscore, when I say that there are boundaries, this is not a way of saying you can surrender. But rather than surrendering, this is actually an exertion of what matters to you. It's an exertion of your own value. And so in these times, despite the noise and confusion that is all around us and the noise and confusion that seems to be growing with each and every day, you, still have a choice. We each have a choice. We always have a choice. And in this case, our choices, we can either hunker down and retreat and pull the covers over our heads, or we can step forward and turn outward and do our part. I'm obviously urging you to make the second choice, to step forward, to turn outward, and to do your part. None of us can save the world on our own, and I'm not asking you to. But I don't want you to turn away. Each of us needs to do our part to safeguard our dignity. And I believe, and I just don't believe this, I know this from experience, that as one of us steps forward to safeguard the dignity of another person, someone who we don't even know will be watching us, maybe even witnessing what we're doing. And in our small act of stepping forward and safeguarding the dignity of someone else, they will see us, it will inspire them, and they will decide to step forward themselves to safeguard the dignity of someone else. And when they see you step forward to safeguard your own dignity, when they're watching you, even though you don't know that they are, it will empower them the next time that their dignity is abridged. It will empower them to step forward and to safeguard their own dignity. You have the power to do that. It's like a positive contagion as opposed to the negative contagion that we're living through with this pandemic. But it has to start with us. It's not coming from Washington, D.C., that's obvious. It's not coming from our capital, that's clear. It's probably not coming from your state capitals. I don't think it's coming from a lot of people. I think to safeguard our dignity has to start with each and every one of us, and it has to spread from us to others and keep spreading from there. And so let me just close today with my hope for you. As always, it's that you take good care of yourself in these times. And in doing so, that you don't turn away from others, but instead you turn outward toward others. And when you do turn outward, let us choose to safeguard the dignity of all people. And let us choose to safeguard our own self-dignity. If you haven't responded to our questionnaire yet, I hope you will. There's a link on our Facebook page. There's a link on our website. If you have filled it out, I hope that you will share it with your network. We'd love to hear from more people. The deadline is May 31st, which is coming up. We will be sharing those results with you in the coming weeks. If this episode about dignity resonated with you, if you think it matters to someone else, one way that you can step forward when it comes to dignity is to share this episode with another individual. I hope you'll do that. In the meantime, I'll be back next week, next Wednesday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time for another special edition of Turning Outward Together. Until then, I hope you stay in good health and good spirits. Be well.